morning comes too early, hands already warm, working for a better day, trying to keep me warm.
Welcome to this new study on the book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes in many ways is a very strange book. It may have generated more widely different interpretations than any other book in the Bible. It's full of internal contradictions. But more than anything else, this book is about the human encounter with death. Qohelet, the author, returns to the fact of human mortality time after time, as if he cannot quite fathom it. There is a long tradition of thought in which the encounter with death is seen as a potentially redemptive confrontation. Reflection on the end of life and its importance on the question of meaning in human existence is as old as human culture itself. So that is one way we are going to approach the reading of this book of Ecclesiastes. But before we begin to dig into the details, we start with a prayer. O God, our Father, open our eyes and enlighten our minds as we study your work. So grant that our minds may know your truth and our hearts may feel your love, and then confirm and strengthen our wills that we may go out to live what we have learned. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. We're going to start with some of the mechanics of the class. The study is 6 weeks long. Once a week, we'll post a new pre-recorded video of this study on Northgate's website. Each session is about 30 minutes in length, and you can watch it any time that is convenient for you. On Monday evening, there will be a follow-up Zoom discussion session to discuss the current week's video and scripture reading. If you have signed up for the follow-up Zoom session, we will send you the Zoom link. The first discussion session will be Monday, April 13th at 7 p.m. We're also planning an in-person discussion session on Tuesday mornings if there is enough interest. You do need to sign up in advance to participate in the Zoom discussion session because we need to send you the Zoom link. If you haven't yet signed up, you may send an email to onlineclasses@northgateumc.org and say you want to participate in the Zoom discussion session. Any Bible translation you have will work for this study. At different times, I will be using different translations, but for the most part, they are very similar. I will primarily be using the New Revised Standard Version Updated Edition. I will also be using several sources or commentaries over the course of this study. My primary sources are Ecclesiastes, the Abingdon New Testament Commentaries by Julie Ann Duncan, the Wisdom books by Robert Alter. This is from his Hebrew Bible translation and commentary. Ecclesiastes and Song of Solomon by Vernon McGee. And we are also going to take a look at the Epic of Gilgamesh and also the Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy as supplementary material. You do not need to buy any of these books. If you have a copy of an Old Testament Bible with you, that will be helpful. I will also occasionally post handouts on the website that offer some supplementary materials. Ecclesiastes is considered to be wisdom literature. In our Old Testament, the books of Job, Proverbs, and Ecclesiastes are all called wisdom books. Wisdom writing was a fairly widespread practice in the ancient Near East. Its perspective is international and often universalist. That is, books like Job, Proverbs, or Ecclesiastes are not just Hebrew-focused or Christian. They are mostly applicable to any religion or all people. The focus of these wisdom books is on the realm of day-to-day living and on the individual in relation to God and society. In the wisdom perspective, God is first and foremost Creator God, the one who has ordered the structure of the cosmos and society. The wisdom authors seek to impart awareness and understanding of these divinely ordered structures so that humans can live in a state of harmony and well-being with the world around them. By such wisdom, humans may navigate the complexities of life and find well-being and success. They raise questions of value and moral behavior, of the meaning of human life, and especially the right conduct of life. There is very little in the three wisdom books of the Old Testament that is specifically Israelite. We're going to read and discuss the first two chapters of Ecclesiastes today. Before we get to those, a short introduction to the Epic of Gilgamesh. The tale of King Gilgamesh has an ancient origin. The historical figure behind the tale, the ruler of the Mesopotamian city of Uruk on the northern bank of the Euphrates, is believed to assume the throne around 2600 BCE. Other than this, we have little historical record of him, but something about him caught the imagination of subsequent generations of storytellers. Tales of his exploits were circulated orally and eventually written down in Sumerian around 2000 BCE. Then around 1700 BCE, a Babylonian author writing in Akkadian drew creatively on these various tales to compose an epic story of this king's efforts to thwart mortality and achieve eternal life. There is a flood story in the Epic of Gilgamesh that has been linked to the flood story about Noah in our book of Genesis. Scholars have also recognized specific textual parallels between the Gilgamesh epic and the books of Ecclesiastes, and the similarities between these two compositions are more substantive than two or three instances of shared phraseology. It has been suggested that the story of Gilgamesh is deeply etched in Qohelet's imagination. We will talk about some of these similarities as we go along in this study, so stay tuned. I've also mentioned Qohelet a couple of times here already. So who is this Qohelet, and what does he have to do with the book of Ecclesiastes? The title Ecclesiastes is taken from the ancient Greek translation of the book's Hebrew name, or Hebrew title, Qohelet, the book's spokesperson. It seems to have meant one who assembles, but it is a term apparently not used anywhere else. The NRSV uses the word teacher. We may have grown up with the title Ecclesiastes, but in the 21st century, the book of Ecclesiastes is increasingly referred to as Qohelet, although the author is often referred to as teacher. J. Vernon McGee, whose commentary we have included in our bibliography, tells us up front that Solomon is the writer. This fact is very well established among conservative expositors, and there is no other reasonable explanation for the book, according to McGee. Solomon, the son of King David, lived in the 10th century BCE and reigned until his death in 931 BCE. But McGee wrote this 50 years ago, and he was well aligned with other conservative expositors. I say this as first evidence of a statement I made in the opening of this video that Ecclesiastes may have generated more widely differing interpretations than any other book in the Bible. There are virtually no modern mainline scholars that believe Ecclesiastes was written by King Solomon, nor that it was written anywhere near the 10th century BCE. There is some evidence to help establish a probable time frame when Ecclesiastes or Qohelet was written. The Hebrew used in Ecclesiastes reflects a later stage in the development of that language, a period sometime after the Babylonian exile. The presence of Persian loanwords indicates that it is most likely dated after the rise of the Persian Emperor Cyrus, who defeated Babylon and allowed the Jewish exiles to return to Jerusalem in 538 BCE. So it was likely written after that date. On the other hand, fragments of the book as part of the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in Cave 4, which were dated to the mid-2nd century BCE. The book of Sirach from the Apocrypha shows familiarity with the book of Ecclesiastes. Sirach was written around 180 BCE. Further evidence suggests that the book shows no signs of instability brought about by the Seleucid wars beginning around the mid-3rd century. So it seems likely then that the book was written after the mid-5th century and prior to the mid-3rd century BCE. As to who wrote the book, No one knows except to say that Solomon was long dead at the time the book was written. Qohelet is the name assigned to the author by scholars. His own status is a matter of some debate, though it is apparent he sympathizes with the concerns of his constituency. Wherever he himself is situated on the social ladder, he shows himself to be acutely aware of the hierarchical structures. His advice to any who find themselves in the presence of authority or power is uniformly conservative. He advises caution and diplomacy. In several instances, Qohelet displays a wary, if not critical, attitude toward governing powers. With all this in mind, we begin chapter 1, the first 2 verses. The words of the teacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the teacher. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. The first 2 verses give us 2 very important pieces of information. Qohelet, or in most of the translations, the teacher, is introduced. We are also told he is the son of David, king in Jerusalem. The second part of this verse certainly gives us reason to believe that it was, in fact, Solomon who wrote these words. When we go to verse 12, the author again claims to have been king over Israel. So could Solomon have written this book? Well, not if it was written somewhere between the 3rd and 5th centuries BCE. The book of Proverbs and the Song of Songs both include explicit attributions to Solomon, but Solomon's name is found nowhere in the book of Ecclesiastes. More importantly, the royal identity does not seem to play a role after the first 2 chapters. In the remainder of the book, Qohelet speaks from the perspective of a subject, not a ruler. At the end of the book, he is once again spoken of in the 3rd person as a wise man, not a king. The second verse, and I'll read that again here, offers a motto or summary of Qohelet's teaching in the form of a quotation. Vanity of vanities, says the teacher. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. The theme word here is the Hebrew word hevel. It occurs 38 times in the book of Ecclesiastes. That is half the occurrences of this word in the entire Old Testament. It's traditionally translated as vanity. The literal meaning of the Hebrew term is mist, vapor, or breath. McGee uses the King James Version and doesn't offer his own translation, so he uses vanity. Robert Alter translates the word as merest breath or mere breath. Julie Ann Duncan translates the term as vapor. Hevel, breath, or vapor is something utterly insubstantial and transient, and in this book suggests futility, ephemerality, and perhaps also the absurdity of existence. The constant use of repetition from the first verse onward gives the rhythmic prose of Qohelet an incantatory power, and at the same time provides one of the central themes, that it is the very nature of reality for all things constantly to repeat themselves. The use of hevel, vapor, is predominantly used as a metaphor in the Old Testament. In Ecclesiastes, Qohelet uses the term metaphorically, but he may use the term with different connotations within the same passage. We'll see that in several different places. Right now, let's go on to read verses 3 through 11. What do people gain from all the toil at which they toil under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down, and hurries to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Round and round goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, where they continue to flow, all things are wearisome, more than one can express. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, or the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, "See, this is new"? It has already been in the ages before us. The people of long ago are not remembered, nor will there be any remembrance of the people yet to come by those who come after them. Verse 5 tells us the sun rises and the sun goes down. This cyclical movement of day and night is taken as prime evidence in nature of the repetitive cyclical character of reality. This notion is a radical challenge to the conception of time and sequence given to us in Genesis and elsewhere in the Bible, where things are imagined to progress meaningfully, as in the 7 days of creation toward a fulfillment. The next two verses invoking the cyclical movement of wind and rivers continue this version of pointless movement round and round. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Round and round goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they continue to flow. Verse 11 tells us there is no remembrance of people long ago, nor will there be of people yet to come. This is a radical and deeply disturbing idea for the Hebrew imagination, which, on the basis of many earlier books in the Bible, sets great store in leaving a remembrance. Let's go on to verse 12. I, the teacher, was king over Israel and Jerusalem. I applied my mind to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to humans to be busy with. I saw all the deeds that are done under the sun, and see all is vanity and a chasing after wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted. I said to myself, I have acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who were over Jerusalem before me. And my mind has had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I applied my mind to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceived that this also is but a chasing after wind. For in much wisdom is much vexation, and those who increase knowledge increase sorrow. With verse 12, the book shifts from the impersonal mode to the autobiographical style that will dominate until the 8th verse of chapter 12. The author introduces himself. This opening section of the book imitates the style of ancient royal inscriptions that boast of the king's accomplishments. Hyperbole is the stock in trade of such records. Their purpose is to exalt the king and memorialize his achievements for posterity. Qohelet was clearly familiar with such inscriptions, but he has turned this form to an opposite purpose. Instead of parading his colossal successes, Qohelet dramatizes his colossal failure. He begins by defining his enterprise and his method of inquiry, specifically all that is done under heaven. Throughout the book, Qohelet uses this same phrase, under heaven or under the sun. Here, what happens under the sun means the divine activity in the world, but his investigation yielded no satisfying results. Having outlined the task, he moves directly to his sweeping negative verdict. The business of humans is an unhappy one. He wanted to understand all worldly phenomena in some integrated way, but he ended up, as he says in verse 18, for in much wisdom is much vexation, and those who increase knowledge increase sorrow. So let's go on to chapter 2, the first 11 verses. I said to myself, come now, I will make a test of pleasure. Enjoy yourself. But again, this also was vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? I searched with my mind how to cheer my body with wine, my mind still guiding me with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly until I might see what was good for mortals to do under heaven during the few days of their life. I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks and planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which to water the forest of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had slaves who were born in my house. I also had great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who has been before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and of the provinces. I got singers, both men and women, and delights of the flesh, many concubines. So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure. For my heart found pleasure from all my toil, and this was my reward from all my toil. Then I considered all that my hands had done and the toil that I had spent in doing it, and again, all was vanity and a chasing after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. Having set the stage with his summary comments on his quest for understanding in chapter 1, Qohelet describes his journey in more detail here. There appears to be two phases to the king's trials. One in which he experiments with more hedonistic pleasures, and one in which he seeks to gratify himself with grand achievements. It may seem strange to have two such different avenues to fulfillment standing side by side, but when seen in the light of confrontation with death, it makes sense. In the first case, we try to avoid death by losing ourselves in activities that bring instant gratification. In the second case, we seek to circumvent death by projecting our identities onto something or someone who will survive us, a fortune, a reputation, a descendant. So let's go on with verse 12. So I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the king's successor do? Only what has already been done. Then I saw that wisdom excels folly as light excels darkness. The wise have eyes in their head, but fools walk in darkness. Verse 12 says, So I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly. The Hebrew verb here is the same as in verse 11. In verse 12, the NRSV says, I turned to consider. In verse 11, the NRSV says, I considered. The more direct Hebrew translation is, I turned. The repeated use of the phrase points up Qohelet's project of restless experimentation. He turns in one direction and then in another, but of course all proves to be just vapor or breath of vanity. His meaning in verse 12 seems to be that the man who comes after me can only do no more than replicate what I have already done. His view of wisdom here is paradoxical. He recognizes that wisdom offers no way out of life's futility, no escape from the inevitable fate of death that awaits the wise, just like the fool. But wisdom nevertheless provides what one might describe as a privilege of clarified consciousness. It is far better to live without illusion, like Qohelet himself, than to live in the deluded life, like the fool. The first part of verse 14 is a proverb. The wise have eyes in their head, but fools walk in darkness. We go on to the last half of verse 14 through verse 17. Yet I perceived that the same fate befalls all of them. Then I said to myself, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then I have been so very wise? And I said to myself that this also is vanity, for there is no enduring remembrance of the wise or of the fools, seeing that in the days to come all will have been long forgotten. How can the wise die, just like fools? So I hated life, because what is done under the sun was grievous to me, for all is vanity and a chasing after wind. There's a double-edged sword here that undercuts the arguments he just made. The fact remains that the wise man will be swallowed up by death, like the most united fool. And after he is gone, all remembrance of him will vanish. We go on with verses 18 through 23. I hated all my toil in which I had toiled under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to my successor. And who knows whether he will be wise or foolish? Yet he will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I turned and gave my heart up to despair concerning all the toil of my labors under the sun, because sometimes one who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave all to be enjoyed by another who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. What do mortals get from all the toil and strain which they toil under the sun? For all their days are full of pain, and their work is a vexation. Even at night their minds do not rest. This also is vanity. Qohelet doesn't think about the example of just any toiler. It is the wise, skilled toiler he describes. We might speculate that it is his own vested interest in the problem that is reflected here. The specific situation he described is also his own situation. It is also the case that in offering an example of the man who has used his wisdom to obtain success, he offers us the world at its very best. This is the ideal vision of the proverbial literature. Those who labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill will flourish. But for Qohelet, the crude fact of death mocks this ardent labor and refined skill of the wise person. No matter how one acquires one's gains, no matter how justly they are deserved, death comes all the same. And those gains ultimately transfer to someone else. There's an asymmetry between effort and outcome here. The fruit of one's diligent, skilled labor may be passed on to one who has done nothing to merit it. This doesn't mean he would be satisfied if one could know the product of one's own work would go to a deserving recipient. That might help a little, but the real sticking point for Qohelet is the fact of death. Verse 24 through 26, the end of the chapter. There is nothing better for mortals than to eat and drink and find enjoyment in their toil. This also, I saw, is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner, he gives the work of gathering and heaping, only to give to one who pleases God. This also is vanity and a chasing after wind. There's nothing better for mortals than to eat and drink and find enjoyment. This may look like a contradiction, but it is really another example of Qohelet's dialectic thinking. He is looking for resolution to these contradictions. Immersion in sensual pleasure, especially in the extreme form, may bring no lasting good, but in the futility of our lives, the simple pleasures of the senses here and now are all we have, and we might as well take advantage of them. In verse 26, the NRSV translates hot as sinner, to which Robert Alter objects. He says it means one who gives offense or one who misses the mark. But in the end, we are told that all is vanity, vapor, mere breath, and chasing after the wind. And that's where we'll begin in our next session, Chasing After the Wind. We'll read chapters 3 and 4. We'll read about the mystery of our times, and Qohelet will be lamenting injustice in the next session. I hope you can join us on our discussion Monday evening. You can send an email to online.classes@northgateumc.org to get the Zoom link. Meanwhile, have a good week.
People talk about difference, but I just see the same. Every heart need kindness, every soul need a name, and we're deep. Children laughing somewhere, sounds of better days. Keep the light inside you, don't let the darkness stay. So sing a song for mercy, sing it clear and kind. We all walk this same good earth, just trying to ease our mind.